The human crew stood on the metal deck of their new ship, staring at it in disbelief. They had expected something small, maybe a little old, but nothing like this. The ship in front of them looked ancient, broken, and covered in strange alien symbols. The ship's name, the Outcast, flashed in bold letters on the side, mocking them. It was the weakest ship in the entire fleet, and it was all they had. The aliens who had given them the ship laughed behind their backs, certain that humans wouldn't last a day in space with something this outdated. The human crew tried to hide their disappointment. They had been chosen for an important mission, but now it seemed like they had been handed a death sentence. "We're really going to fly this thing?" Captain Miller asked, his voice laced with disbelief as he ran his fingers along the cold, rusted hull of the ship. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Parker, shrugged. "Looks like it, Captain. No choice now. We'll make it work." The crew had been prepared for something far better. The aliens had promised them a vessel that could stand up to the might of the galactic fleet. Instead, they had been handed what seemed like a scrap metal nightmare. The ship's engines were weak, its shields barely functional, and its weapon systems looked like they hadn't been updated in centuries. Despite the poor start, Captain Miller wasn't one to back down. He looked at his crew, who were all watching him closely, waiting for his next move. "All right, everyone. We've got a mission, and we're going to complete it. We may have the weakest ship in the fleet, but that doesn't mean we're weak. We've got brains, we've got skill, and we've got something no alien fleet can take away from us: our determination." His words were simple, but they worked. The crew began to move with purpose. The engineers immediately went to work, opening panels and assessing the damage. The scientists examined the ship's alien technology, trying to figure out how it worked. Even the pilots, who had never flown such an old ship, began studying the controls. Hours turned into days, and the crew worked tirelessly, patching up the ship as best they could. The aliens were watching from their station, amused by how hard the humans were working on what they considered a hopeless cause. Captain Miller and his crew didn't mind. They had one goal: to prove the aliens wrong. They worked with what they had, using every piece of knowledge they could get their hands on. They scavenged parts from the ship's storage and even used their own technology to replace failing systems. "We're getting somewhere," Lieutenant Parker said one evening as he stared at the newly repaired engine. The hum of the engine now sounded a little stronger, and the lights on the ship flickered with more life. It was still far from perfect, but it was improving. By the time they were ready to leave, the Outcast was a far cry from the wreck it had once been. The ship had power, its engines were functional, and even the weapons were starting to work, though still far weaker than anything the aliens had. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. They had made it work. Captain Miller stood in the command center, looking out at the stars through the viewport. His crew was ready. They were nervous, but determined. "All systems are green," Lieutenant Parker reported, his voice steady. "We're good to go." Miller nodded. "Take us out, Parker. Let's show them what we can do." The ship slowly lifted off the ground, its engines roaring to life. The humans had done the impossible. They had turned the weakest ship into something that could fly. As the Outcast rose higher into space, Captain Miller couldn't help but smile. "Let's see how the galaxy reacts to this," he muttered, his eyes fixed on the distant stars. As they flew into the unknown, the aliens who had once laughed at humanity's weakness had no idea what was coming. They didn't know that the humans aboard the Outcast weren't just fighters. They were survivors, and they had only just begun. The crew of the Outcast was ready. They had spent days repairing the ship, making it flyable. Now, they were about to face their first real test. The mission was simple, or so it seemed. They were to patrol a section of space filled with hostile alien ships. The Alien Council had no real expectations for them. In fact, they thought the human crew would fail within hours. Captain Miller stood in the command center, looking out at the stars. The mission was dangerous, but he was confident. The humans may not have the best ship, but they had something more important: heart. "We've got this," Miller said, his voice calm but firm. "Stay sharp, and we'll get through this." Lieutenant Parker, the ship's navigator, turned to him. "We're entering the target zone, Captain. I'm picking up a few enemy ships on the radar. They're moving fast." "Don't engage unless I give the order," Miller replied. "We're here to scout, not to start a fight." The crew nodded, and the outcast moved deeper into the dangerous zone. The ship's outdated radar system made it harder to spot threats, but the humans had a plan. They were smart and quick, always thinking one step ahead. As they got closer to the enemy fleet, Miller couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The aliens in the fleet had been quiet, almost too quiet. Something wasn't right. Suddenly, Parker's voice broke the silence. "Captain, we got trouble. A ship just appeared out of nowhere. It's massive, and it's heading right toward us." Miller's heart raced. He knew this could be a trap. The aliens might want to test them. He took a deep breath and looked at his crew. "Get ready, everyone. We can't let them see us panic." The ship rocked as the outcast was hit by a blast from the enemy's weapons. The shields flickered but held up. The crew wasn't ready for this kind of fight, but they were ready to give it everything they had. The alien ship, much bigger and stronger, fired again. "Shields at 60%, Captain," shouted Lieutenant Turner, the engineer. "We need to get out of here. Parker, take us around them. Get some distance," Miller ordered, trying to keep calm. But the enemy ship wasn't going to let them escape so easily. It pursued them, matching the outcasts' every move. The crew worked quickly. They knew this ship wasn't built for battle, but they could use its speed and the repairs they'd made to their advantage. "Captain, the weapons systems are still weak. We can't do much damage," Lieutenant Turner said, his hands flying across the control panel. Miller's mind raced. He needed to think fast. The outcast wasn't powerful enough to win a direct fight, but they had one thing the aliens didn't: human ingenuity. The crew had spent hours studying the ship's old technology, and they'd made a few improvements. It wasn't much, but it was enough. "Parker, are we close enough to the asteroid field?" Miller asked, his eyes scanning the radar. "We're getting there," Parker replied, his voice tense. Miller didn't wait. "Take us through the field. Full speed." Parker didn't hesitate. The ship swerved sharply, heading straight into a dense asteroid field. The enemy ship hesitated for a moment before following. The field was narrow, with large asteroids drifting in every direction. It was the perfect chance for the humans to escape. The outcast flew through the field, narrowly avoiding huge rocks and debris. The crew's hearts pounded in their chests as they weaved through the chaos. The enemy ship wasn't used to such tight maneuvering. It was slow, heavy, and clumsy compared to the small, fast outcast. Come on," Miller muttered under his breath. The enemy ship fired again, but the blast missed by inches, hitting an asteroid instead. The crew cheered, but Miller stayed focused. This wasn't over yet. "Parker, take us closer to that big asteroid ahead. I want to see if we can use it to hide," Miller said. Parker nodded, quickly guiding the ship behind a massive rock. The enemy ship, unable to track their movements in the field, slowed down, trying to figure out where they had gone. "We've got a moment," Parker said. "They can't see us." "What now?" Miller thought fast. He knew that the longer they stayed hidden, the more time the enemy had to regroup. But they had to do something bold. "Turn off all non-essential systems. Let's hide our signature. We'll wait until they get closer, then we hit them fast." The crew held their breath as the enemy ship passed by, getting closer and closer to the outcast's hiding spot. Just as it was within striking distance, Miller gave the order. "Now, fire everything we've got." The crew acted instantly. The outcast's weapons fired weakly, but it was enough to surprise the enemy. The alien ship took the hit, its shields flickering as it slowed down. The humans had done it. They had survived. Miller exhaled, a grin creeping across his face. Well done, everyone. We've earned their respect. The alien fleet hadn't expected the humans to outsmart them. The enemy ship retreated, and the humans were left in the asteroid field, breathing heavily but victorious. "We did it," Lieutenant Parker said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Yeah," Miller said, his eyes shining with pride. "We did." After their narrow escape from the enemy fleet, Captain Miller and his crew couldn't relax. They had won the battle, but they knew that much bigger challenges lay ahead. The alien council, who had watched from afar, would not take kindly to the humans' victory. The outcast, the ship they had been given and laughed at for being the weakest, was far from perfect, but somehow it had survived. And the crew had begun to wonder, was the ship changing? Was it becoming something more than just a piece of junk? It started with the engines. At first, the ship had barely been able to reach half of the speed the humans needed. But after the battle, the crew noticed something strange. The engines seemed to be running smoother. The hum they had grown used to was quieter now, like a well-oiled machine. Lieutenant Turner, the ship's engineer, couldn't explain it. "I swear, these engines shouldn't be working this well," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead as he tinkered with the control panel. "We fixed them, but this is beyond what we did." "Maybe it's just luck," Lieutenant Parker joked from the navigation station, though he didn't believe that for a second. Miller walked into the control room, his eyes scanning the various readouts. He had a gut feeling that something wasn't right, but he couldn't put his finger on it. "Keep an eye on it, Turner. We need to know if it's a one-time thing or if we're actually improving." For the next few days, the ship kept getting better. The shields, which had once barely held up against a single hit, now seemed to grow stronger. Every time the crew ran a test, they saw small but clear improvements. The weapon systems, though still weak compared to the advanced alien ships, had started firing more accurately. The crew couldn't explain it, but it was happening. "It's like the ship is learning," said Parker one morning as he adjusted the ship's flight path, "or adapting to us somehow." Miller nodded slowly, the idea sinking in. He didn't know how or why it was happening, but the outcast was getting stronger. Maybe, just maybe, the ship wasn't as broken as the aliens had thought. Maybe it had potential. "Let's take it for a test flight," Miller decided. "We're heading into new territory, and we need to know just how much the ship can handle." The crew gathered in their usual places as the outcast soared through space. As they passed through different parts of the galaxy, they noticed more than just upgrades in the ship's systems. The ship itself seemed to be reacting to the crew. It was almost as if it was alive, growing with each battle, each repair, each human touch. The crew decided to head into a region of space known for its dangerous nebula, giant clouds of gas and dust, where visibility was almost zero and communication was impossible. The region was avoided by most, even the most powerful alien ships, but the outcast had been growing stronger, and Miller believed they could handle it. As they entered the nebula, the ship began to behave differently. The readings on the instruments flickered as the dense gas blocked their radar, but the ship's systems compensated for it. The engines, now stronger, seemed to push through the thick clouds with more ease than before. The shields, once fragile, held up better than they ever had. "Captain, this doesn't make sense," Turner said, his eyes glued to the readings. "We're moving faster, smoother, and the ship is handling the nebula better than we ever expected. It's like it knows how to fly through this stuff." Miller stared at the readings, his mind racing. He had never seen anything like this before. The ship, once a failure, was now becoming something special. And the more the crew used it, the more it seemed to grow. Then, something unexpected happened. As they flew deeper into the nebula, the outcast seemed to power up on its own. A bright blue light flashed from the core, and for a moment, the entire ship glowed with a strange energy. The crew gasped, unsure of what to make of it. What was that? Parker asked, looking around. I don't know, Miller replied, his heart racing. But I think the ship just did that by itself. Suddenly, the weapons systems came online. The small, outdated lasers that had once been almost useless now hummed with power. The shields, too, seemed to shimmer with a new strength, radiating energy. It was as if the ship had absorbed something from the nebula, something that made it stronger. Captain, we're picking up enemy ships on the radar, Turner said, his voice urgent. Miller's heart skipped a beat. How many? At least 5. They're coming fast, and they've spotted us. The aliens had found them. They had no choice now but to fight. But for the first time since they had boarded the Outcast, Miller felt something different. Confidence. The ship wasn't weak anymore. It was strong, and it was ready. Prepare for battle, Miller ordered. Let's see what this ship can really do. As the enemy ships closed in, the Outcast was no longer the helpless wreck it had once been. It moved with speed and grace, dodging laser blasts and firing back with unexpected precision. The crew worked together, using the ship's new power to outmaneuver the aliens. It wasn't an easy fight. The enemy ships were still more advanced, but the humans didn't need to be the strongest. They just needed to be clever. And with the new strength of the Outcast, they were able to land blow after blow, slowly wearing down the enemy. When the battle finally ended, the enemy ships were retreating, their hulls damaged and their weapons offline. The Outcast had won again. We did it, Turner said, looking in disbelief at the damage reports. We really did it. Miller smiled, his eyes on the ship's controls. No, the Outcast did it, and it's only getting stronger. Word of the human crew's victories aboard the Outcast spread quickly across the galaxy. The aliens who had once laughed at humanity and given them the weakest ship were starting to realize something. The humans were not only surviving, they were thriving, and they were doing it with a ship that should have been nothing more than a scrap heap. The Alien Council, the very ones who had sent the humans on their mission as a test, began to worry. They had expected the Outcast to fail. Instead, it was proving to be more than just a ship. It was a symbol. The galaxy was watching, and the Outcast was becoming a legend. Did you see what they did to the Valkyrie fleet? Commander Zorak asked, his voice filled with disbelief as he watched the latest reports. The Valkyrie were known for their ruthless power, but they had been forced to retreat after the Outcast made a daring attack. A ship that small, and they took down a fleet 3 times its size. You're not the only one who's noticed, replied his advisor, a nervous-looking alien named Vax. The humans have done the impossible. The Outcast isn't just winning battles, it's outsmarting every alien fleet it encounters. How? Zorak narrowed his eyes. That's the problem. We thought they were weak. Now they're showing us their strength, and it's growing with every victory. Across the galaxy, leaders and generals from different planets watched in awe. The humans were not only surviving, they were becoming a force to be reckoned with. Ships that had once dismissed humanity as insignificant now feared the name the Outcast. The alien fleets that had underestimated the humans found themselves in retreat after facing the ship and its crew. Back aboard the Outcast, the human crew could feel the change. They could sense the shift in the air, the change in how the galaxy saw them. The Outcast was no longer just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's defiance. And they were about to face their biggest challenge yet. Captain Miller stood in front of the crew, his expression serious. We've been winning battles, but things are about to get tougher. The galaxy is watching, and we've made a lot of enemies along the way. Enemies? Lieutenant Parker raised an eyebrow. You mean the entire galaxy? Pretty much, Miller replied. The Alien Council is gathering their forces. They want to take us down, but we're not backing down. We'll keep fighting, and we'll make them regret underestimating us. The crew nodded, their eyes filled with determination. They had come this far, and they weren't going to stop now. Meanwhile, on the alien homeworld, The council was having a heated debate. "The humans have become a problem," said Grand Admiral Excel, the most powerful leader in the council. "They've humiliated us time and time again. Their ship, the Outcast, has defeated fleets much stronger than anything they should be able to handle. It's time we end this. We can't let them become a threat to the galaxy." Another council member, a creature known as Vok, added, "But we must be careful. They've already shown us they can surprise us. We can't underestimate them." Zorak, the commander who had been monitoring the humans' progress, stepped forward. "I have a plan. The humans think they've won every battle, but they're about to face something they've never seen before." "What do you mean?" asked Excel. "We're going to send everything we got at them, all of our fleets, but this time we'll use their overconfidence against them. We'll make them think they've won, and then we'll crush them with a surprise attack." The council members exchanged uncertain glances, but Zorak's plan was accepted. The trap was set. Back on the Outcast, the crew had no idea that the alien council was preparing their final move. The ship, now stronger than ever, was on its way to another mission, one that would take them deeper into enemy territory. But the crew was ready. They had faced every challenge so far, and they weren't about to back down now. "We're entering the enemy's territory," Lieutenant Parker said, his voice tense. "We'll have to be careful." Miller nodded. "We've made it this far. We've outsmarted every alien fleet we've come across. This won't be any different." The crew braced themselves as the ship moved deeper into hostile space. They knew they were on the verge of something big, but they didn't know that the biggest challenge yet was waiting for them. Across the galaxy, the eyes of the alien council were fixed on the Outcast. They had underestimated humanity before, but they were about to make their final move. The humans thought they were unbeatable. But the council was ready to show them that the galaxy wasn't as easy to conquer as they believed. As the Outcast flew deeper into enemy space, the galaxy held its breath. The stage was set for the biggest battle the universe had ever seen. The humans had made their mark, but now it was time for them to face the true power of the galaxy. And the galaxy was watching. The crew of the Outcast was about to face their toughest challenge yet. They had been to the farthest corners of space, defeated enemy fleets, and earned the respect of the galaxy. But something new was on the horizon, something they couldn't see coming. Captain Miller paced back and forth in the command center, his mind racing. The Outcast had been getting stronger with each battle, but Miller knew that their enemies wouldn't let them go unchallenged forever. The alien council, humiliated by the human success, was preparing for a final devastating blow. But there was something Miller had learned during their travels, something that could change everything. It had all started with a strange ancient object they'd discovered while scouting the derelict space station. At first, the artifact seemed like just another relic of a long-forgotten alien race. But as the crew studied it, they realized that it was no ordinary object. It was powerful, far more powerful than they had ever imagined. Lieutenant Turner, the ship's engineer, had been the first to notice its strange energy. "Captain, there's something wrong with the artifact," he had said, his voice filled with a mix of curiosity and caution. "I've never seen anything like it. It's emitting energy, but it's not like anything we've encountered before." "What do you mean?" Miller had asked, stepping closer to the glowing object that now rested on a table in the ship's lab. "It's as if it's alive," Turner explained. "When I touch it, the energy seems to react. And the more I study it, the more I realize this thing isn't just some ancient relic. It's a weapon, or at least, it could be." Miller had been intrigued. The crew had already made the Outcast stronger, but this artifact could be the key to defeating the alien council. They needed to unlock its power, but the mystery surrounding it was growing. Now, several days later, the crew was no closer to understanding the full potential of the artifact. But one thing was clear: it was powerful. And with the council preparing for their final assault, Miller had a feeling that this object would be their last hope. Turner, Parker, Get the artifact ready, Miller ordered. We're going to need everything we've got if we're going to survive what's coming. Lieutenant Turner nodded. I'm still not sure how to unlock its full potential, but I think we're close. We've made some progress. The energy readings are off the charts. I don't care about the readings, Miller said. I care about what it can do. We need to be ready. As they worked, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that the artifact was watching them. It pulsed with energy, as if it had a life of its own. Every time they got closer to unlocking its secrets, the object seemed to react. It was almost as if the artifact was waiting for the right moment to reveal its true power. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the Alien Council was preparing their final strike. Grand Admiral XL and his advisors had gathered in their war room, ready to make their move. They had underestimated the humans time and time again, and now they were determined to put an end to the outcast once and for all. They think they can win, Cell said, his voice cold and filled with hatred. They think their ship is invincible, but we will show them the true power of the galaxy. Zorak, the commander who had been tracking the humans' every move, stood before the council. The artifact they found. It's dangerous. If they learn how to use it, it could change everything. Hazel glared at him. We know. That's why we need to strike before they can fully understand its power. We can't allow them to use it against us. As the council's fleets gathered, ready to descend upon the outcast, the crew was preparing for a fight they weren't sure they could win. But they had no choice. The artifact was their only hope. Miller stood in front of the artifact, his eyes locked on its glowing surface. We don't have time to study this thing properly. It's now or never. Turner stepped up beside him. We've made some adjustments. I think we can unlock its energy, but it's going to take a lot of power. If we get it wrong, the ship could be damaged. Miller didn't hesitate. Do it. We need that power. The crew worked quickly, connecting the artifact to the outcast's systems. The energy in the room was intense, almost overwhelming. As Turner flipped the final switch, the artifact hummed loudly, its energy flooding through the ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ship's systems began to glow, its engines roaring to life in a way they never had before. The energy from the artifact was feeding into every part of the outcast. The shields strengthened, the weapons powered up, and the engines surged forward with unimaginable speed. It's working, Parker said, his voice filled with awe. The artifact. It's making the ship stronger, stronger than ever before. Miller smiled, his heart racing. We've got what we need. Now, let's show the galaxy what humanity is made of. But as the outcast powered up, the crew knew the final battle was only just beginning. The Alien Council's fleets were closing in, and they were about to face the full might of the galaxy's most powerful forces. The crew had the power of the artifact on their side, but would it be enough to survive the storm that was coming? The galaxy was on the edge of a knife. The Alien Council had prepared for their final strike, ready to crush the humans and the outcast. But as their fleets moved into position, something unexpected was happening. The humans were no longer just surviving. They were becoming a real threat, and that terrified the galaxy's most powerful commanders. Commander Zorak stood at the front of the war room on his flagship, watching the data streams and battle plans unfold before him. The moment of truth had arrived. The combined fleets of the Council were closing in on the outcast. The humans, in their weak little ship, had no idea what was coming. We'll wipe them out, Zorak said, his voice cold. He looked around at his officers. The humans have made their final mistake. Their ship is stronger than we thought, but we have more ships, more weapons. They will fall before us. But as the minutes passed, Zorak's confidence began to fade. The fleet was ready. The weapons were primed. Yet, something gnawed at him. He couldn't ignore the strange reports coming in from the front lines. Something was different about the outcast. One of Zorak's officers, a young alien named Thrax, entered the room, his face pale. "Commander, we've been receiving strange reports," Thrax said. "The outcast. It's not like any ship we've ever faced." "What do you mean?" Zorak asked, turning his sharp gaze on the officer. "The energy readings. They're off the charts. The artifact the humans found. It's powering their ship in ways we don't understand. We thought it was just an old relic, but it's giving them an edge. A huge edge." Zorak's heart sank. He had heard rumors about the artifact, but he hadn't believed it would have this kind of power. The outcast had already been more than a match for their best fleets, but now it was becoming something far more dangerous. "We can still win," Zorak said, his voice tense. "We have the numbers. The firepower. We'll crush them." Thrax hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Commander, our fleets are not the only ones concerned. The entire council is watching this battle closely. They know if we fail, we will be the ones who fall. And if the humans win." Zorak's anger flared. "Don't speak of failure. We will not fail." But deep inside, Zorak couldn't shake the nagging fear that something was wrong. He had seen the outcast in action. It wasn't just surviving. It was winning over and over again. The humans had proven themselves far more resourceful, far more capable than the council had ever anticipated. And now, they were more powerful than ever. Meanwhile, aboard the outcast, Captain Miller stood at the bridge, his eyes scanning the displays as the alien fleets closed in. The artifact had given them an unexpected advantage. But Miller knew it wasn't enough to win the war. Not yet. The council's forces were too vast, their power too great. But he had one thing the aliens didn't: the heart and determination of his crew. "We're ready," Lieutenant Parker said, his voice steady. "The ship's systems are fully powered up. The artifact's energy is flowing through every circuit. We can take them on." "We've come this far," Miller said, a grim smile on his face. "We can't back down now." The battle began. As the fleets clashed in the depths of space, Zorak watched in disbelief. The outcast was doing the impossible. The small human ship was outmaneuvering and outthinking fleets that were hundreds of times larger. The humans were not just fighting. They were rewriting the rules of battle, using their creativity, their innovation, and their will to survive. "What are they doing?" Zorak shouted. His eyes were wide as the outcast fired on the advancing fleet, its weapons more powerful than anything the aliens had ever seen. How are they holding their own?" Thrax, watching the battle unfold on the screens, could barely believe what he was seeing. "It's like they know exactly how we're going to move before we do. They're predicting every step we take." Zorak's fear grew. He had never been afraid of a battle. But this was different. The humans had turned the tide. They weren't just surviving. They were winning. "We need to retreat," Zorak said, his voice trembling. "We can't fight them. Not like this." Thrax stared at him, shocked. "Commander, are you suggesting we retreat?" Zorak's eyes were wild. "Yes. We pull back. We regroup. We're facing something we don't understand. And if we don't stop now, we may never get another chance." The alien fleets, hearing the commander's order, hesitated. But it was too late. The outcast had already taken advantage of the opening. With a single strike, it disabled the lead flagship in Zorak's fleet, sending shockwaves through the entire command structure. "No, no," Zorak yelled, his heart pounding. He couldn't believe it. The humans, with their weak little ship, had turned the battle in their favor. They had destroyed his fleet, his pride, his power. As the outcast pressed the attack, Zorak's fear turned to terror. He had never experienced defeat like this. The humans had not only defeated his fleet, they had shattered his confidence. His worst nightmare was coming true. The humans were stronger than anything he had ever encountered. The galaxy would never be the same. The battle had ended, but the galaxy would never be the same. The outcast had done what no one thought possible. The small, once weak human ship had destroyed the alien fleets and sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Commander Zorak and his forces had been forced to retreat, their pride shattered. But the war was far from over. Something bigger was on the horizon, and the entire galaxy was watching. Captain Miller stood on the bridge of the Outcast, looking out at the stars. The ship was battered but still operational. His crew had proven themselves time and time again, and now they had done the impossible. The artifact had given them the power to defeat an enemy far greater than themselves. But Miller knew the hardest part was still ahead. "We did it," Lieutenant Turner said, a rare smile on his face. "We actually won. The Council didn't stand a chance." "It's not over yet," Miller replied, his voice serious. "They'll be back, and when they come, we need to be ready." The crew had faced impossible odds, but now they were the most powerful force in the galaxy. The Outcast had taken down an entire alien fleet with the help of the mysterious artifact, and the rest of the galaxy was starting to take notice. News of their victory spread quickly, and soon the galaxy was buzzing with whispers of the humans and their incredible ship. Across the galaxy, the alien races watched in fear and awe. The humans had proven themselves not just survivors, but conquerors. They had defied all expectations and taken their place as a new power in the galaxy. Admiral Xel, once certain of his superiority, sat in his war room, staring at the latest reports. His eyes were cold, filled with a burning hatred. The humans had humiliated him. His fleets had been defeated by a single ship, and now the galaxy was watching. "This cannot be allowed to stand," Xel muttered to himself. "The humans have become a threat to our very existence. We must act quickly, before they become too strong." His officers, watching him, knew that the alien council was desperate. The defeat had shaken them to their core. Xel's pride had been shattered, and now his focus was solely on how to destroy the humans before they grew too powerful. Meanwhile, back on the Outcast, Miller knew that the real fight was just beginning. The artifact had made their ship stronger, but it was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of humanity's will to survive. The galaxy now saw them as a new power, and the other races would not tolerate this. "We have to prepare for whatever comes next," Miller said to his crew. "We've shown the galaxy what we're capable of, but that means we'll have even more enemies. We need to be smarter. We need to be faster." Lieutenant Parker, standing beside Miller, nodded. "We'll be ready, Captain. Whatever they throw at us, we'll fight back." Miller's mind raced. The artifact had given them an edge, but the galaxy was full of dangers, and the alien council wouldn't give up easily. They would return with even greater force. But now, humanity had a new place in the galaxy. They were no longer weak and helpless. They were strong, and that strength would be their greatest weapon. As the Outcast prepared for its next journey, the crew knew that the road ahead would be difficult. They had already defied the odds once, but they couldn't do it alone. The galaxy was vast, and the challenges they faced were unlike anything they had ever encountered. But together, they were unstoppable. Across the stars, the other alien races watched closely. The humans had become a force to be reckoned with, and that fact was not lost on them. Some were afraid, while others saw an opportunity. But no one could deny the power of the humans and their incredible ship. Commander Zorak, now licking his wounds, sent a message to the council. "The humans are no longer the weaklings we thought them to be. They are stronger than we could have imagined. We need to act quickly before they grow too powerful. We cannot let them dominate the galaxy." The council, still reeling from the defeat, responded with urgency. They knew they had to strike back, and they would do everything in their power to crush the humans before they became an even greater threat. But deep down, the council feared one thing above all else. If the humans were left unchecked, they might one day become the rulers of the galaxy. Meanwhile, back on the Outcast, Miller stared out at the stars. He knew the coming battles would be harder than anything they had faced before, But he also knew that humanity was no longer just a speck in the galaxy. They had a new power, a new voice, and a new destiny. The outcast was no longer just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's rise, and the galaxy would never forget the day the humans claimed their place among the stars.